Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Sasuke Retsuden, the Uchiha Descendants, and the Heavenly Stardust. Chapter 8. Sasuke was about to muster a counterattack against the entire group of dragons to clear them all away in one fell swoop with either Susanoo or Chidori. But when Minnow stepped in front of him to try and protect him, he changed his mind. "Minnow," he said, "I'll draw off the little ones. You take down the big one." In response, Minnow raised his tail, full of self-satisfaction. Sasuke wrapped his arms around the lizard, gave it a sign with his eyes, and then tossed it toward the Titan. While he was at it, he hit the Terras soaring past Minnow in the sky with a lightning-style strike. The Terras were knocked out and plummeted to the earth one after the other, and while one managed to evade the lightning strike, it ultimately collided head-on with an Omnith, its eyes still blinded from the lightning. Its sharp beak stabbed deep into the Omnith, and the angry bird dragon kicked out blindly with both legs, striking with little regard to who was friend and who was foe. Meanwhile, Minnow had sunk his teeth into the tip of the Titan's tail. Using his tail like a tightrope walker's pole, he closed it on Zancel. "Don't let Minnow near me," Zancel cried out, but the top of its back was a blind spot for the Titan. Neither its head nor its tail could even reach the spot where Zancel stood. "Terra, come and save me." One of the Terras wheeling in the sky heard this order and hurried to Zancel. It grabbed onto his collar with its beak just as Minnow was about to attack and whisked Zancel up into the sky, leaving Minnow's claws to slash at the air and rip into the Titan's back. The Titan howled and twisted around to try and throw Minnow off. Minnow didn't bother to resist. He dropped to the ground and ran in the direction that Sasuke had signaled with his eyes earlier. The Titan chased after him with a stride 10 times as long as Minnow's. Panting, Zancel pushed up his glasses. "To think that mere Minnow could give me such trouble." He was of course alarmed and angry that the creature Minnow he thought was under his control had turned on him, no doubt at the suggestion of his new master. Number 487 Sasuke was chipping away at his precious bow power. Zancel clucked his tongue and shouted thunderously at a nearby Terra. "You! What are you flying around for? I told you to kill Sasuke." That said, the area around the ninja was a free-for-all. Sasuke himself hadn't taken so much as a scratch, however. He nimbly dodged attacks as he lured dragons to strike each other. Even though the dragons knew their frenzy only played to Sasuke's advantage, they couldn't disobey Zancel's orders, and so the Terras swooped down towards Sasuke. But before they could get close to him, they were hit with lightning strikes and dropped to the ground. "Shouldn't push these dragons around too much, you know," Sasuke challenged Zancel as he caught the falling Terras with wind style. "You're not the one using the reanimation jutsu, Gigi is." "Nonsense." A blue vein popped up on Zancel's forehead. On Sasuke's instructions, Minnow lured the Titan away. Adroitly crossing from one rocky spot to the next, he descended on a diagonal. The Titan was not the maneuverable type. Crushing the rocks that were its footholds, it lumbered after the smaller lizard. Using a Tyranno head as a launch pad to leap into the air, Sasuke checked that Minnow had reached the edge of the lake and then cried out, "Cut its tendons." In response to this call from Sasuke, Minnow changed direction. He slid under the belly of the Titan and raced to the base of its tail to sink his fangs into its log-like leg. Without giving the monster the chance to even cry out in agony, Minnow ripped out the flesh of the ankle together with the bone. Helplessly, the Titan bent heavily at the knee. Losing its balance, it fell over and plunged into the lake headfirst. An incredible spray of water splashed up to the clouds. "Useless waste of flesh," Zancel cursed. "Get out of that lake already." Blessed with buoyancy, the Titan was quickly able to right itself. But the bottom of the lake was like a bog and unable to support the weight of the Titan, it quickly swallowed up its legs. Without a foothold, the Titan couldn't crawl out, and so it was stuck there, unable to move, its head poking out above the surface of the water. "Damn it," The huge body backfired. Zancel spat venomously and issued an order to the Terra carrying him. Go down to the ground and pull that thing out of the lake. He didn't realize that he had given a fatal order. The dragons could not take multiple orders from anyone who was not their summoner. And Zancel's command just now had overridden his other orders. The dragon was now to go to the ground and rescue the Titan. As a result, the Terra opened its beak and dropped its heavy burden to the ground to make itself lighter before gliding off toward the Titan. Ah! Zancel slammed into the rocks in a burst of bright red like rose balsam. He bounced a few times, kept rolling, until he finally stopped, frozen and twisted. Sasuke clucked his tongue and climbed down to check on the sand-covered Zancel, but there was no longer anything left of his original shape. His abrupt end was due to his ignorance of reanimation jutsu. The Terra in the sky above squawked once and circled around to the observatory. With Zancel's death, his orders were cancelled. The dragons scattered and began to target the prisoners once again. Minnow, we have to hurry to the observatory. Then, as if it had been watching for the moment when the dragons left, a hawk descended from the sky above. It was the bird they used to communicate with Kakashi. A letter was wrapped around its leg. A message at a time like this. Sasuke hurried to open it. A familiar hand wrote that the Kakashi-backed coup d'etat had been a success, the Prime Minister had been captured, and he would be heading back to the capital with Queen Marina. Kakashi was apparently feeling a bit loose after this neat resolution. He even included a casual note about Nanera and the maid traveling with him. So things were resolved in Nagar. Sasuke stuffed the letter into his pocket and hurried toward the observatory. Sakura beat back the dragons attacking her and bought time for the prisoners to escape. She caught the rear leg of a charging ornith and did a shoulder throw to slam it into the ground. Two prisoners came racing up and jumped onto the fallen bird dragon. Gano and Penzilla. They brought the hose in their hands down on the backs of the ornith's knees. Graw! The ornith threw its head back and tried to get away, but it couldn't stand up now that the bones in its knees had been smashed. But dust soon collected on its crushed joints, healing the injuries. With miserable looks on their faces, Gano and Penzilla brought down their hose again and again, compelled to keep up with the pace of regeneration. Damn it! Quit healing! Penzilla cried. You can't go fixing yourself. You're going too far, Sakura started to say and then closed her mouth. Both humans and dragons were similarly desperate. The reanimated dragons looked like powerful monsters in the eyes of the prisoners. But the dragons were also frantic. The orniths and the pachycephalors were herbivores and did not have natural predatory instincts. However, they also couldn't disobey their reanimator's order to slaughter all the prisoners. Ah! Sakura cried and caught a Terra plunging down from on high. The Terras were also unsuited to battle. Their bodies were extremely light, having evolved for flight. They were long, nearly 10 yards in length, but they didn't even weigh 25 pounds. Their long weapon was their sharply pointed beak, but after cracking open the skulls of so many prisoners, their sole weapon was losing potency. Even so, they were not permitted to retreat. Or die. The spirits brought back to life with Edo Tensei were under absolute control of their reanimator. A Terra would tangle with Sakura for a bit, they would push and pull at each other, and then finally the Terra would withdraw. It would spread its wings and start to escape into the sky, but the swarming prisoners would catch it and yank it back down to the ground. The Terras were wild and desperate, and thrashed at the prisoners' heads. But even when the Terras were covered in blood, not one of those hands let go. The Terra Rachis, having evolved from the finger-like bones of their front legs, were light like twigs and would break easily if the creature's wings were pinned behind its back. At first, they would squawk and cry for help, but when the bones of their neck were beaten down and their airways blocked, they could only wheeze. As soon as they were hurt, however, the dust of the reanimation jutsu would cover the wound and heal the creature. Meanwhile, the prisoners would frantically beat at them with rocks to keep them from recovering. It was endless torture on either side. until the reanimation jutsu was released. We must hurry and find Gigi and free these dragons. The moment Sakura thought this, she was overcome with dizziness. Dropping to her knees, Sakura felt an aura of bloodlust behind her and rolled to one side. The kunai that grazed her cherry-pink hair plunged deep into the ground. Gigi. Not even a heartbeat later, Sakura flipped around and leaped to her feet. She lifted a piece of rubble as big as she was tall and threw it toward Gigi. He drew his sword and sliced it in two with his long blade. By the time the pieces clattered to the ground, Sakura was gone. She ran. Gigi sniffed contemptuously. At this late stage of the game, fleeing was pointless. A Terra in the sky found Sakura descending the cliff and reported back to Gigi. Her movements were sluggish. He wasn't sure just how she'd escaped from the wreck of the observatory, but it seemed that she hadn't recovered completely from the poison. Gigi wove signs as he ran and thrust a hand down to the ground. Earth style. Mud wall. A wall of earth rose up and blocked the way forward, forcing Sakura to stop. Gigi chased after her. Backed up against the dirt wall, Sakura glared at him with sharp eyes. What are you after? He yelled. Gigi heard a shriek in the distance. He didn't know whether it was the cry of a person or a dragon. Making dragons and people suffer like this. What exactly is it that you want? I do feel awkward about striking you with a killing blow twice, document. And he really meant that. It was selfish, but you would have liked the doctor and Sasuke to survive, if possible. Now that it had come to this, however, he had to kill them. I told Sasuke, don't go leaving your wife alone. Sakura took a step back and bumped into the wall of earth. Gigi took a step forward. Bang! He suddenly couldn't move. By the time he realized he was in trouble, it was too late. His joints were firmly fixed in place, and he couldn't even wiggle his body. A barrier. A trap lying in wait. The sand at his feet blew up in the wind, revealing a ward with a curse mark carved into it. A thread of bright red chakra twined up to bind Gigi's body firmly in place. The ward had clearly been set to activate a jutsu when the target passed over it. While pretending to run away, Sakura had been luring him here right from the start. Damn it. Gigi pulled a kunai from his sleeve and cut at the chakra threads. But the threads only released the crackling chakra contained within. There was no place where he could cut himself free. At some point, a mark patterned after a sakura petal had popped up on his wrist. When did you? This mark. When you came to the infirmary. Just in case, Sakura said calmly. I'm a doctor. I can easily tell just how much of a chakra user someone is when examining them. Gigi struggled furiously to find a way out, but he soon realized that he would not be able to break away and relaxed. Not yet. He hadn't lost yet. If Sansel joined up with him here, he could still get out of this. Or maybe there was a way to make Sakura release the jutsu. Negotiate, say that he would release the reanimation jutsu. As he grasped for whatever chance at victory he had left, Gigi suddenly sensed an enormous amount of chakra around him, and a chill ran up his spine. His knees gave out. The pressure of this chakra was so intense that any remaining thought of escape was shattered in an instant. Gigi. You're the one behind the reanimation jutsu, came a low voice from behind. Appearing with Minnow in tow was his cellmate, who up to that point had never once shown bloodlust like this. Sasuke reached into the pocket of Gigi's coat and took back the vessel containing the ultra particles. He kept digging and found a yellow liquid sealed in plastic. Is this the drug you used on Sakura and me? Pushing down the anger simmering up inside of him, Sasuke activated the Sharingan and faced Gigi. Those eyes, Gigi gasped when he saw the Sharingan. You're Uchiha? You're not going to get Zanso with that. You've basically got the same chance at winning as I do. Gigi met the red eyes of his own will. You're going to use Jinjutsu on me, yeah? Fine, Do what you want. If you're going to do it, I want you to make it so I never wake up. I'm not letting you off so easily. You'll pay for what you've done, but there's something I want to ask you before I use my genjutsu. Sasuke drew his Sharingan back and lowered his voice as he continued. What is your objective? Zansel's was to use the revived dragons as weapons of war. But you're not that type. That type? The type to act on behalf of his country. Ouch. Gigi smiled lifelessly. That's just your opinion. Maybe I was working with Zansel because I agreed with his convictions. In that case, why did you save Peninsula? Gigi blinked slowly at Sasuke, uncomprehending. When Peninsula was about to be attacked by Minnow, Sasuke explained. If you were going to get rid of all the prisoners, then why didn't you let him die then? Because you cared about Peninsula? Or because you were reluctant to make Minnow a tool of murder? Neither, okay? Gigi snapped. I brought Minnow back to life for that purpose. And I mean, Peninsula, I am not going to start caring about some guy just because he happens to be in the same cell as me. Not too long ago, I stood and watched when Gano was about to be killed. But Sasuke stared back at Gigi. You acted instantly. Sometimes, people were spurred on by feelings they weren't aware of and took action they didn't expect. Even now, Sasuke clearly remembered when he had protected his close friend before he even realized he was doing it and leaped out in front of Haku's 1,000 stinging needles of death. At the time, he'd been deeply perplexed by his action, but now he understood it. They had any number of breaks between them, but from that time on, Naruto had been Sasuke's good friend in a way that went beyond reason or logic. He didn't think that what Gigi felt toward Minnow, Gano, and Peninsula was the same as the feelings Sasuke had for Naruto. But at the very least, he must have had some kind of affection for them. Zansel is dead, Sasuke declared. We're handing you over to the land of Ridaku and returning to our own country. But before that, if you have some exceptional circumstances, tell me now. Why should I? I don't want to end this without knowing. Besides Sasuke, Minnow stretched out his neck, cocked his head slightly to one side, and stared at Gigi. Gigi looked back and forth between Minnow and Sasuke, and his expression relaxed with a sigh. Well, the plan's ruined now anyway, he muttered and began his story slowly. I'm a rogue ninja from Sunagakure. I originally came to the capital after an invitation from the land of Ridaku's prime minister. This was back when the old king was still alive. The prime minister was hatching this plan to hire rogue shinobi and create a private army. He called me in to coach him on shinobi and ninjutsu. While I was staying at the palace, the prime minister assigned a personal maid to me. And I fell for her. Rather than be a part of some war, I wanted to live forever with her in the land of Ridaku. And the prime minister found out? Sakura asked, and Gigi nodded. I guess someone saw us together. We got caught pretty quick. But the prime minister said that if I wanted to be with her, I didn't have to be in his private army. In exchange for your helping Zansel? Zansel was an archaeologist at the palace. He found a text about a jutsu to reanimate the dead in the library and succeeded at deciphering it. But even if he knew the method of the jutsu, Zansel couldn't use chakra. So I was called in to perform the reanimation jutsu. The agreement was if I worked with Zansel here at the observatory for a year, I could live however I wanted after that. I lied to my girlfriend and said that I'd been called up for a long-distance mission. I promised we'd meet again in the capital in a year. But before the year was up, she died. Gigi stared at the ground with an exhausted look on his face. I was wrong. If I'd really loved her, I couldn't have left her. I shouldn't have left her all alone. Hey, Sasuke? I told you, didn't I? Don't go leaving your wife alone. That's how I really feel. People die so easily, Minnow grunted quietly. Whether he understood or not, the lizard was listening to Gigi, and Gigi glanced at him before lowering his eyes once more. I was told that the reason we were bringing Minnow back to life was to have him act as a guard for the prisoners. I wasn't told the true objective until the day I found out my girlfriend was dead. Using dragons as weapons, I mean. At first, of course, I didn't want to. But Zansel and the Prime Minister made me an offer. An offer? They'd get my girlfriend's body for me if I helped revive the dragons. And if I had her body, I could see her again. You were going to bring her back to life with the reanimation jutsu. Sakura finished his thought. Noticing the look on Sakura's face, Gigi grinned. Don't be hurt, document. And don't make that face at me. I just had to see her one more time. Even if I had to force a meeting with a forbidden jutsu. Sasuke, what would you have done in my position? You'd do the same thing, wouldn't you? Sasuke stayed silent, very much unable to say that he wouldn't have done that. He was remembering the time he'd been reunited with his older brother Itachi after Itachi had been brought back to life with Edo Tensei. Being able to talk with him for even a few minutes after clearing up their misunderstanding was one of Sasuke's most treasured memories, even if it required the use of a forbidden jutsu. If his own wife passed away for some reason, he just might want to do the same thing as Gigi. Maybe. It was Sakura who answered him. I mean, if Sasuke died and I had the Edo Tensei jutsu in front of me, I might reach for it. Out of desperation to see him. So then. You get how I feel, Gigi started to say, and Sasuke cut him off. But the two of us aren't alone. I know my friends would stop me. They'd tell me not to do anything stupid. We're stopping you for the same reason. And I'm sure that your girlfriend, Margot, she definitely wouldn't want to be forced back to life with a reanimation jutsu. Margot? Sasuke lifted his face. Margot. That was Gigi's girlfriend's name? The letter he'd just gotten from Kakashi was still stuffed in his pocket. He pulled the creased paper out and sent his eyes over the text. Gigi, you've been here for over a year, right? He said. How did you find out Margot was dead? A notice of her death came, addressed to me, Gigi replied. In the Prime Minister's own hand. Some epidemic. The Prime Minister was in on it. Sasuke showed Gigi the letter from Kakashi. It's here in this letter from my comrade. After toppling the dictatorship, the new King Nanera decided to transfer the Queen and the Prime Minister to the capital. An attendant of the king, a woman named Margot, was originally a maid in the palace, so she's very knowledgeable about the situation inside. She's apparently been very helpful. Gigi gaped at him. What? This is information from someone I trust. Sasuke told him. Gigi's eyes devoured the text of the letter, then their focus wavered and wandered. He couldn't properly digest this sudden development. Even so, after going over the letter a few times, tears began to spill from his eyes. They had lied and said Margot was dead to make Gigi do exactly what they wanted. Why hadn't Gigi realized that this was exactly the sort of thing Zansel would think up? Tears slid down to his chin and dripped off to wet his thigh, but the sound of this was drowned out by that of a branch breaking. Snap. Gigi yanked his face up. The Tyranno had killed its aura enough to approach Sakura from behind unnoticed. But when it realized that Gigi had spotted it, the beast crouched low and sprang forward. Doc. Gigi immediately wove signs in front of his chest. Rat. Ox. Monkey. Tiger. Pig. Dragon. The signs to release the reanimation jutsu. By the time he finished weaving the signs, Sakura had already reacted to the danger herself and was punching the Tyranno in the jaw. Crack. The Tyranno sailed up into the air and fell to the ground. It got up quickly enough, but the hard skin at the tip of its snout suddenly began to peel away. The bits of skin turned to dust and began to rise into the sky, not carried by any wind. Now that Gigi had woven the signs for release, the dragons were free from the reanimation jutsu. The terras that had been holding down the prisoners, the Spinos crawling along the ground, their legs broken, the Titans struggling in the cold water, the dragons that had been treading water for such a long time were at last liberated from their endless sleep and greed-filled control. Bit by bit, peacefully, their souls returned to the other side. And of course, that meant Minnow too. The lizard grunted feebly, reluctant to leave. He pressed the gentle curve of his head against Sasuke's side and rubbed it up against him. The tails swinging from side to side fell away, the pieces dancing up into the air. You finally get to go back, Him, Minnow? Sasuke stroked him under his chin, and Minnow sighed and narrowed his eyes happily. He wrapped claws with visible veins tightly around Sasuke's waist. Good night. His limbs and torso turned to dust bit by bit and rose to a place where there was no pain or struggle. Sasuke felt flecks of cold against his cheek, and just when he was wondering if the dust of the reanimation jutsu was as icy as this, he realized it was snowing. The gently falling flakes mixed with the rising dust seen from below looked like the dance of gold and silver sand against a black curtain of gauze. With the tomo in his eyes, Sasuke could see everything, including how the thin crystals of ice reflected the light of the moon and sparkled like a rainbow. After taking a crack in the jaw from Sakura, the Tyranno stubbornly fought the providence of the release of the jutsu. Although its upper body was already more than half gone, the eyes of the Tyranno were not giving up. It swung its long tail and forced itself to its feet. Bam! It kicked at the ground boldly with one foot and charged Gigi, perhaps to get revenge for having been put under his control, or perhaps because he saw Gigi as prey out of simple instinct. But after letting his guard down with the release of the jutsu, Gigi's reaction was entirely too late. Blood spurted as curved talons sank deeply into his chest, and the tips of those talons stabbed into his throat. Gigi! Sakura cried. Having gotten its vengeance in the end, the Tyranno melted into the sky, showered in blood. Hang on! Sakura ran over and released the chakra thread, while Sasuke caught him as he slumped backward. Sakura was about to press her hand to his wound when Gigi's own bloody hand grabbed it. You don't have to treat me. No. She brushed his hand aside and sent out her chakra. I mean, you're going to see Margot, right? You just found out she's still alive. Just leave me be. His vision grew darker. I can't face her like this. Go. The other guys. Choked by the blood in his throat and without the strength to even cough, Gigi couldn't push out another word. The sound around him was warped like he was underwater. He let his eyelids slide shut, not finding the steady, sinking weight of his body. It was funny somehow to think that he would die here alone. I thought I would die when they told me Margot was dead. Regretting the fact that I left her alone, that I wasn't always with her. I thought she died because I wasn't there to keep her safe. But that was pure arrogance. Off in the distance somewhere, Sakura and Sasuke were calling his name. He was so jealous of them he could hardly stand it. If he had had the strength that they did, he was sure none of this would have happened. If he'd been able to believe in what wasn't there with him, what he couldn't see with his eyes. It was too late for regrets now. In the black depths of his world, Margot called out to him. End of Chapter 8. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more. Epilogue. The new King Nanera set a bouquet of blue poppies on the memorial and pressed his hands together in prayer. Engraved in the polished granite were the names of 62 prisoners, all those who had died in the terrible incident that happened in this place the previous year. There was no sign of the former astronomical observatory. The buildings had been destroyed along with the ancient texts and expensive astronomical measuring instruments, and the rubble was still strewn about everywhere. Lowering his hands, Nanera turned toward his two attendants. Where's my sister? She says she will finish her inspection in the north and arrive here tomorrow perhaps, replied the attendant with the chestnut brown hair. Margot. I see. Nanera nodded. I've been so focused on the capital in Nagar that I've completely put off rebuilding this place, even though astronomy is an important discipline for the land of Ridaku. We'll have to set it up again so that we'll be able to study not just the heavens but also excavate fossils. Do you think my sister would be angry if I said I wanted to establish an archaeological institute alongside the observatory? She might get angry. She'll say, "Do you think money grows on trees? You have to think more seriously about how to use tax revenue." Margot sounded so like Marina that the attendant beside her laughed out loud. She grinned and continued, "But it's fine if she gets angry at you. So go ahead and suggest it." Right. You're exactly right, Margot. Nodding vigorously, Nanera ran over to where his horse was resting under a tree. He set a foot in two. The stirrup vaulted onto his horse's back and turned to look back at his attendants. One was the woman who had long taken care of him, and the other was someone he had brought along specifically to show them around this area, a model prisoner serving a life sentence. Let's go look at the lake next. Come on, Margot. GG. At a sunny table on the open patio of the popular Japanese-style cafe set up inside the traditional sweet shop Tammy in the old city, Sakura met up with Ino. They were both busy with work and home, but even so, a couple times a month, they would rearrange their schedules and meet for tea. They were close friends with plenty to talk about: the children, their work, their husbands. So the other day, I had some fun with Inogen's hair and the curling iron. What? Inogen must have hated that. He did, but I sort of forced him to let me. I mean, that boy takes after Saya's hair's bone straight, isn't it? I went to all the trouble of styling it for him, and then it goes right back to the way it was. Huh. If he doesn't get bedhead, I might be a little jealous, actually. Oh. That reminds me. Tamari told me that Shikamaru's bedhead is absolutely wild. I know. I saw it so many times when we were on missions. He looks like a porcupine. They chatted excitedly about nothing in particular, while sampling the new menu item of Enmitsu crepes topped with Sanchoku dango dumplings and Anko sweet beans. Ino suddenly turned her face to one side. Oh. It's Sasuke. Was he on his way home after stopping at the Hokage's office? He was just walking along empty-handed, but his looks and the way he carried himself were so cool that he attracted attention no matter where he went. Sakura watched him walk away and then threw herself down on the table, groaning, "Sasuke really is so hooted." Huh? You just got the memo? Ino turned exasperated eyes on her. I mean, true. Sasuke is as hot as he ever was. But how many years have you been married exactly? You're only now feeling the hotness? I mean, and weren't the two of you on a long-term mission until just yesterday? We were, but in the middle of a mission's no time to stare and drool, Sakura complained. There's this switch in me that flips as a shinobi, so I'm not always just gawking stupidly at him. But when we got back to the village, it's like... It felt so fresh and new. Yeah. Fine. Thanks for the crepe. Ino teased and cut into the chocolate sauce crepe with a knife, and then grinned and leaned forward. Hey. You never wear jewelry. What's with the ring? Oh, this? Sakura dropped her gaze to her left ring finger. Looking at the small red stone with fresh eyes, she giggled. Ino narrowed her eyes in a smile. That's great. Strictly speaking, it was not really the definition of a present. But this ring was now Sakura's treasure. Sasuke had made it by manipulating the ingredients in Earth style, and mixed in with those was his own chakra. This ring was the reason he'd been able to find her when she was pinned down by that pillar and unable to move. He picked up on the faint amount of chakra the ring contained and worked his way down to where she was. This ring had saved her life. but it might get in the way at work. After saying goodbye to Ino, Sakura smiled on her way home, took off the ring, and tucked it into her pocket. Someday, when I'm an old woman, I'll retire from work. Then I'll have all the time in the world to wear the ring. Until then, she'd treasure it and take good care of it. Sakura stroked the ring from the outside of her pocket. Would Sasuke remember it when he was an old man? Sarada made supper by herself that day. She came home, arms laden with shopping bags, and abruptly declared, "I'm doing all the cooking today." She had apparently gotten very into cooking while on her homestay at Irika's house. "I made all kinds of things with Master Irika, and I think my cooking's gotten a lot better." That evening, the Uchiha table was filled with far too many dishes for the three of them to be able to finish. The main course was beef sukiyaki stir-fry with tomato, complemented with side dishes of stewed root vegetables, tomato and okara tofu salad, boiled broccoli, fried egg, and slices of mackerel pike fried with salt. On top of the rice neatly piled in their bowls was a mix of soy and bonito flakes combined with squash fried with minced chicken meat. These were the impressive results of Sarada's full efforts, a sampling menu of all kinds of small dishes. "Wow! What a spread!" Sakura cried. "And you made lots of Dad's favorites too." Well," Sarada shrugged. "That's just a coincidence. The tomatoes were cheap today." However coincidental it might have been, she had piled Sasuke's plate high with mostly tomatoes. For the first time in a long time, the entire Uchiha family sat around their dining table together for a meal. Sasuke simply ate without commenting on the flavor of anything, so Sakura gently kicked his ankle under the table. Lifting his face, Sasuke met Sakura's eyes and froze for a moment before at last figuring out the meaning of the kick and stating his extremely simple opinion. "It's good." Sarada said. "Really?" "Yeah. It's good." "Great." As always, Sakura's husband's vocabulary was small. But his message came across. "Honestly. You don't have to be nice just because I made it, you know," Sarada said, looking delighted nonetheless. While they were eating, the doorbell rang. "Oh. I'll answer it." Sakura pushed Sasuke back down as he started to stand up and headed for the front door. When she opened it, Shikamaru was standing there with a thick folder in his arms. "Sorry to bother you during supper time," he said. Sakura shook her head. "It's urgent, I guess?" "Yeah." "Sarada sounds happy," Shikamaru remarked, glancing down the hallway. "It's not just her. Sasuke too. It's been a while since the whole family was together." "Sasuke too, huh?" Shikamaru frowned and held the folder out to Sakura. "Interim report on the analysis of the ultra particles from the Institute. I wanted to get it to you." "Thanks," Sakura said and took the folder from him. Although they'd stopped Zancel, there was still plenty that didn't quite make sense to her. The sentence "the stars increased in map of the heavens," the Konoha mark. The meaning of the star that never strays and how Zancel was able to see with his glass eyes. Any one of these might have had some connection with the Sage of Six Paths illness, and she wanted to scrape together every bit of information she could, given that the target they were facing was an unknown variable. "How's Naruto?" she asked, and Shikamaru shook his head. "Not great. I keep telling him to rest, but he's there in the Hokage's office every day. And even when I deliberately give him less work, he finds new work on his own. Maybe it distracts him to be busy. And it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's going to get better with just rest." "True." While they talked, Shikamaru kept glancing down the hallway. He was concerned that Sarada might come out. They couldn't upset the children. They couldn't let word of this get out. Those were the conditions that Naruto had laid out when Shikamaru and the others had forced Naruto to agree to let them help him. I asked them to make the analysis a priority at the Institute, Shikamaru said and sighed heavily. The situation was such a drag that even saying what a drag it was too much of a drag. If this keeps up, Naruto won't be able to use chakra anymore. We absolutely can't let that happen. End of Sasuke Retsuden, the Uchiha Descendants and the Heavenly Stardust. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.